What's going on, beautiful J4 family and community? Welcome to a Monday edition of J4 Conversations. I hope that everybody's doing well, that your weekend ended well, and that your work week should start on a Monday started off wonderful. That you were progressive in your shop, in your entrepreneurial venture, or raising your children, whatever the case may be. Welcome to this week's edition of Biracialities, where I kind of muse and explore this wonderful, powerful thing called identity. Before we get started, how about them Cowboys, y'all? How about them Cowboys? Hopefully your teams won this season. If you're an astute football fan, I'm not really a big football fan, but had to represent the 49ers. I got a couple of guys that I worked with at the college level that are now playing in the pro sports, to include the NFL. Welcome for those of you just joining us. Thank you guys so much. Just a couple of audio things here. How's my audio? If y'all can let me know, that would be great. And then if the music is too loud or right about perfect, then let me know. Thank you, Magic. And a lot of good to see you. How's the volume and how's the music? Is it a nice balance? Talk to me. Appreciate folks coming in. Before I get started, I want to just talk about a couple of things. One is scheduling, right? So there was one incident where I had a show scheduled, and the another subscriber or a friend in the community said, "Hey, your show is competing with another show." So I said, okay, no problem. And I wasn't pressed for time. And I think it was a weekend, so I just scheduled it to the next day. And then I was supposed to have a show yesterday, but I got caught up. I took my sons to grab some food at a steak spot. And by the time I got home, it was just too rushed, too harried. So I had to cancel. But then in doing that, I realized that someone else had canceled something for the show. So let me say this out here publicly in these YouTube streets. If you have a show scheduled and I'm scheduled to have a show at the same time, please don't cancel your stuff. Run your show. And if I'm going to catch it, I'll catch it on the rewind. But there's so many of us in this space, which is a beautiful thing. So please do not rearrange your YouTube schedule around anything that I'm doing. Out of respect, if something comes up and someone that I'm kind of working with or collaborating with has a show, and if I can arrange it, I will. But there might be a time when I'm not able to, and please don't get upset with me if I have to go ahead and schedule it anyway. So let's go ahead and jump into it. By way of introduction, my name is AJ, the moderator. I am a part of four folks called J4 Conversations, and we started this channel as two fathers chopping it up about life, particularly by teaching our sons competencies. So in essence, this is a parenting channel where you have folks who don't profess expertise but have life lived and want to then share some information, strategy, or just be a sounding board for young parents who are raising their children with intentionality, and they're concerned about the beautiful human beings that they're going to become. I did a show around biraciality, and it got a lot of interest, so I've kind of custom or tailored the show a little bit to talk about parenting Black and biracial children. And so I've been in the biracial space, about 6 months now, if not more, and it's been enjoyable watching young folks grapple with identity by way of culturally dynamic, kind of where I land. I'm a biracial cat born in 1968. My father is a Creole Black man out of New Orleans. He joined the Air Force in 62. His first assignment was France, where he met my mother. My mother's a European French woman, and I was born in 1968 to a married interracial couple at a time where only 3% of interracial couples existed, at least from the data that was able to be gathered. And that sort of shaped my worldview. I'm Black identifying, although I certainly understand as time has passed, as legislation is rearranged, certain ways in which human beings interact, and as more and more interracial couples are getting together and producing beautiful children, that the identity dynamics is shifting and always in perpetually flux. And so today I want to have a conversation with mulatto young people, or particularly parents of biracial kids, and just offer some strategies around how do you center or how do you acknowledge the culture and the identities and the love source of both parents, black and white in this example, and raise healthy, grounded, solid, beautiful sons and daughters who can go out into a world when they become independent, healthy, and conscious about who they are. I'm intentionally using the word mulatto, y'all. I'm intentionally using the word mulatto. I understand it has some luggage assigned to it, but as folks are talking about naming and identity, where I've kind of landed is it's interchangeable, but biracial is understandably conveying the child of two parents of monoracial communities. However, when you say mulatto, you're succinctly saying black and white. And so given that that's much of my audience and much of my life lived, as I pull from personal experiences, I'm just sort of using that name, and you're more than welcome to critique that, co-sign that, or be indifferent to it. That's up to you. I'm a father of 6 kids. My wife and I have 6 children, and they are biracial appearing, although in terms of percentage of blackness, they're more black than I am. My wife is a black woman, beautiful black woman, and together we have 6 kids who appear for all purposes to be biracial or multi-generational, but in terms of their cultural leanings, for the most part, it is rooted within a blackness. And so I want to share some strategies with you not to produce a biracial kid rooted in blackness, but to give them a healthy sense of what I'll call cultural cachet. Cultural cachet is sort of their capacity to move through any circles when they're older, but also to have a particular comfortness within blackness, because through their life since birth, they've touched it, they've consumed it, they've engaged it, they've smelt it, they've interacted with it, and it's just a norm and a comfort for them. I'm not for telling folks how they should identify. That's not my lane. That's not my business. Wouldn't want anyone to do that to me. But I do want a young person that's coming of age and they're making decisions about who they are and what becomes priority to them, which identity is a significant part of how one sees themselves in the world and within social spaces, that they do it with a healthy understanding of their white lineage, and they do it with a healthy understanding of their black lineage. So when they do make a choice, they're making it full conscientious of all the beauty and complexity that is them. All right, shout out to Mulatto. Thank you, Magic Mulatto. Appreciate the love. Mulatto Vanguard, what's going on? I scheduled this for 7 because I thought you were going at 6. I didn't want to overlap with you. But good, glad that you're here, brother. All right. So, why the topic? Why the topic? To create healthy, grounded children with a high sense of personal and cultural esteem. To create healthy, grounded children with a high sense of personal and cultural esteem. And the goal, why I'm doing this, is to create a love and capacity to self-examine black achievement, to create a love and capacity to self-examine black achievement, white achievement, both, and to develop the capacity to detect white bullshit and to detect black bullshit. All right? The goal of this musings is to develop a sense of love for and the capacity to self-examine, analyze black achievement, white achievement, black BS, and white BS. All right? Because there's beauty, complexity, and BS in all cultural communities. And again, is to create a cultural cachet, which allows them to flow fluidly in all circles as adults, but with a particular emphasis on navigating black spaces. All right? So we're kind of low in numbers here, so y'all feel free to chime in. Mulatto Vanguard says balance, right? Balance, balance. Not an over-glorification of one over the other, but a simple balance. Because there's achievements in the community of your white mother or black mother, and there's achievement in the community of your black father or white father, and there's also BS in those communities as well. But what we need is folks who are, particularly biracial folks, who the question of who am I, what am I, who am I, what am I a part of? That's a pervasive question that's often dominant, particularly in the younger years. It's important that we have this holistic understanding of those communities. So let's get into it. All right, let's get into it. So parents, if you're listening in, welcome. Your children should learn about both cultures, okay? Your children should learn about both cultures. All right. Now, there's certain dynamics where they will learn naturally that's applicable to both their white love source and their black love source. Okay. So ways in which you can lift up, nurture, give them a sense of who they are, their familial lineage, the communities by which they come from. I'm recommending you do these things with both family settings or within. The one is to identify the family teachers, to identify the family elders. All right. So if you are a single mom, or if you're in a two-parent home, or a single dad, within your extended nuclear family, whether that's grandpa, grandma, granddaddy, whatever the multiplicity of names we have for grandparents, right? Or it's an uncle, or it's an extended cousin. Most families have an historian. Most families have an historian that kind of gathers and knows a little bit about the family arrival and generations and kind of what they come from and what they're mixed with. But identify the family elders and identify them as teachers. And be intentional, particularly when the young baby is becoming of consciousness, becoming aware of their surroundings, and hopefully they're traveling between in the immediate nuclear family, they have that structure. But hopefully on family trips, or if the family lives nearby, they're spending regular time with both families. So they're seeing their white extended family, and they're also simultaneously seeing their black extended family. But also have a conversation. Have a conversation with someone that you respect on the black side, someone that you respect on the white side, and intentionally ask them to be intentional about how they're teaching, providing learning opportunities, sort of pulling your son or daughter aside when it makes sense and how it makes sense, and just letting them know that they're a part of a beautiful, robust, adjoining family from an interracial perspective, and telling something about their unique cultural history. So the white elder teacher would tell stories about that side of the family, and then the black elder teacher would tell things about that side of the story. So identify a family elder and consider sharing the arrival story. So if you're a second generation immigrant from Scotland, right, there's an arrival story. If you are a black folks and you came here you assume the transatlantic slave trade process, that's a chance to tell that story. If you're from the island or from the continent and you came to go to college, whatever the case may be, tell the arrival story. And your baby will hear two stories. They'll hear a story of migration voluntarily, and then they might hear a story of migration involuntary. And that gives a chance to put the conversation about racial nuance way before the families join. It gets a chance to center it in something centuries old, but it begins the dialogue from a love source. It begins the dialogue from a family embrace, and the child can hear it, and the one explaining it can understand nuance and can know what to stress, what not to stress. But it comes, the first articulation of these historically potentially oppositional groups, the first time they hear that story comes from a love source, and not necessarily in a mandatory curriculum sharing within the K-12 kind of environment. And so identify the family elder and be sure to have them, encourage them to tell the arrival story. I'm talking about great grandma, great grandpa. Let them tell the story in a modern time, but let them babies hear it first, because a lot of the angst that interracial or biracial kids contend with is within one of their family is historically in a space of oppressor, and then the other family, remember, is in the historical posture of the recipient of that oppression, if it's rigidly talked about. And so rather than have a K-12 stoic, disconnected voice speak to that in a K-12 environment, let that conversation occur within the nuclear embrace of family, both white family members and black family members. And someone in the family is comfortable enough to do that. And if you're not able to find someone within the family, within mom, dad, you all have to be the ones to do that. You all have to be the ones to do it. And so sort of lesson and concept number one, do not let your child grapple with the sort of intersection of controversy related to the lineage of his mama and the lineage of his daddy in a K-12 setting. It should happen way before that in a loving embrace and voice of the family. All right. Now, the arrival story implies that you came from somewhere, right? Where did you come from? So in the example of mine, My mother came from France. My mother's father is an Arab cat from Algeria, right? And so there's an Algerian connection, there's a French connection that tells something about the country that you come from. If I look on my dad's side, there's elements of Africa, of course. There's elements of Santo Domingo, and so there's four countries in that regard that can be talked about and can be explored. So your babies are coming up in the United States. They're going to get a healthy understanding of America's inception, America's geography, America's politics, America's democracy, whatever the case may be. They will get that, right? But you've given them in their living manifestation, you've connected them to four countries in my example, or maybe two or more in your baby's example, right? And then can you turn the music down a little, please? Yeah, absolutely. That's what I need to hear. Is that better? Talk to me. All right. Thank you, Magic Mulatto. Appreciate that. So you want to give them a sense of the countries they come from. Now, I don't know if they need to become experts in the country, but if anything, point it out on the map. How many people live there? What's the population? Let me make sure this mic is here. I want to get this right. Right. What's the population? What is the prevailing religion? What is the means of commerce? What's the main exporter, importer? Right. Tell them a little bit about something about the country, because in doing that you connect them not just to a family or a city or a state or to a racial identity. You connect them to continents, you connect them to countries, and they feel a part of something much bigger than themselves. And that's a part of getting out of zip code mentality, where your soul life evolves around where you centrally live and go to school and have social interaction. But because they have a great 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 grandparent that lands somewhere in another soil beyond the Americas, it then connects them to that, and there's a power, there's a sense of broad collective esteem that they gain when they realize their ancestry comes from other countries. And it's beneficial, I believe, if it's more than just, oh yeah, my mom's from France, right? But no, what is France's history? What is France's contradictions? What is France's contributions to humanity and the broader society? So that's something you can do that both families can participate in. Talk about the countries of origin, and then tell your story, tell your family story from one of resiliency. Because if you came as a multi-generational immigrant, well, that's a resilient story. If you came through the transatlantic slave trade process and obviously the families were resilient during chattel enslavement, or if they were freed people of color, there's a resilient story there, right? Tell your family story with a bent towards shine, right? Make your family shine. When you're pouring into your babies, don't tell all the dirt and the crazy cousin and the drug addict and the incarcerated. No, tell your story in a way that lifts your child up. Tell your story of resiliency. And in a biracial story, there is resiliency, because in almost every family, there is resiliency. There is resiliency. Is this making sense, y'all? Can you hear me all right? I don't know why this mic keeps going down. All right, all right. Check 1, 2. All right. Love this so much, telling my story to my kids. Love this so much, telling my story to my kids. Beautiful. Beautiful. And then also share contemporary examples of achievement. This is both families pouring into the babies. This is both families pouring into the babies. Tell your story of achievement, right? You want to put your best foot forward. Pretend like you are on social media and you're telling your story to your child from your social media point of view, where you're just putting the goodness out there, putting and you're exaggerating a little bit, and you're putting a little filter on it, right? And you put a little nuanced smile on it, right? Lie to your babies, exaggerate to your babies. The goal is for them to have a sense of connectedness to their duality, rooted in connectedness to Americas and beyond, but also to have a sense of pride about their family, their collective family unit. And then finally, something that both families can do is to have family pictures of both families dispersed throughout the house. So when the child walks through the door and they go to the wall that has the family pictures, they're seeing black pictures, they're seeing black auntie, they're seeing black cousin, they're seeing black granddaddy, they're seeing black great great grandma, right? And at the same time, on the same wall, the wall is a reflection of what they are living, what family they're in. They see white cousin, they see white auntie, they see white great granddad, they see white great great auntie, grandma, right? And so then that gives them a visual manifestation of a not only a physical joining in their parents, but also a that they're a part of something big, broad, and large. All right. All right. So those are some things that you can do with both. Okay. If you guys are coming in, thank you guys so much. We're having a biraciality conversation around chopping it up about how to lift up the beautiful both cultures of your seeds, your biracial seeds, but also with a particular emphasis on creating Black cultural cachet. So when they navigate the world as adults, they're comfortable doing so in all circles, but also with a particular focus and concentration in Blackness. All right. If you agree, wonderful, let me know. If you're pausing and thinking and vexing with it, let me know. If you agree, let me know that as well. Now, whiteness. How can you teach your babies about whiteness? All right. Potentially controversial statement number one is you will not have to teach your children about whiteness in the same way you'll need to teach them about Blackness, because the K-12 environment, when they go through it, they will come out of it with a healthy sense of Americanness, which will be complexly rooted and associated with a white centrality. My thoughts, my 55-year-old mindset. Their K-12 experiment, their K-12, environment will teach them a healthy regard for whiteness via the text, via the historical presentation, via the literary figures that they're using. There's been an increase in terms of diversification of scholarship, but they will still have a very, very healthy dose of whiteness in America. And K-12, as all state institutions will do, it will ensure that it tells the most favorable story about its country, about its people. No state-sanctioned entity is going to tell a story that puts itself in a disfavorable light. And so your babies, whether they're white, Black, biracial, Chicano, Latino, whatever the case may be, going through a K-12 public environment will come out with a healthy sense of positive association with Americanness and whiteness. All right. If you disagree with that, let me know. All right. What I would recommend is that you teach them or introduce them at some level to the ancestral language, Now, the way Africans arrived, for the most part, although there's countless examples where that may differ, is they don't necessarily know exactly what language they may have come from. But if they do know and they want to explore Swahili or whatever the case may be, teach them some words, teach them some phrases, just kind of get that language out there. It might be a little bit foreign to you as a white or Black parent even, but it is very more likely that there's a heightened familiarity with the white immigration into the United States, back to the country of origin. And in most cases, whether it's England, unless it's England, there's a different language. So if you can teach your biracial child to understand and have a sense of that language, I'm not saying outright bilingual, if nothing wrong with that, but teach them some words, some complexes, introduce them to the language so they have a sense of another connection other than my mother's from France. There was a time, y'all, where I knew, when I lived in Italy, my dad was an Air Force guy, where I knew enough French and Italian to be left on my own. Train, airplane, going from city to city, I was just fluent enough. But when I got back to the United States, I kind of rejected my lessons, and now I'm not bilingual or even trilingual. It's a high regret of my life, but it would have been tremendously valuable to me right now had I known or maintained particularly French. All right, let's check the boxes. Black History Month coming up. We want our kids to know the positive and negative side of both Black and white history and accept and love both as part of them. Yes, it's important we teach our babies to have a healthy love of themselves and the capacity to examine and praise Black achievement, white achievement, while at the same time understanding that it has BS in both. If you come to that grounding, then you are in a positive position by which to move through the world, because you have this balanced perspective, as was talked about a little bit earlier. We want our kids to know mulatto history. They don't teach that in school. We have to teach that ourselves. Yes. There's a standard curriculum that is sanctioned at the Department of Education level and federal that then influences state superintendents of education, and no community of people are going to educate the citizenry to have nothing but the highest regard for it. Okay. And so, in that priority, other things get lost. And that is mostly the narrative, the complex narrative of people of color. Right. And so, absolutely, you're going to have to be intentional about teaching history to your beautiful babies. And I have some strategies in that regard. Mulatto history is erased. Hello, AJ. The balanced perspective is key. The future is golden. Good to see you. Thank you for coming up. I believe this is the first time. Check your email. I sent you something. If you want to collaborate. All right. So now we talked about what you can do in both. We talked about also what you can do in the space of whiteness. But now check this out. And this is also a part of why to expose your beautiful children to black circles and community. Because if any of you have ever spent time in black circles over a projected period of time, you're going to come off with some notion, some interpretation of how blackness perceives whiteness. Okay. You're going to come off with some vibe, some kind of feel, some kind of orientation to how black folks see whiteness, right? So you got your ancestral language that you touched. You've examined the continents that are in your ancestry. You got your K-12 that's going to give you a nice, healthy sense of what it means to be American. And whiteness is going to play the hero figure in that, the shero figure in that. But then to counterbalance that, by being in black circles, you're going to then understand whiteness through a black lens. Now, you need to interpret that as you want to, but this inner circle will give you a sense of what that means, or at least how it's perceived by the black Americans here within the context of the U.S. All right. All right. Yep. Check your email. I would love to hear some strategies about teaching our kids history. Okay, let's get to it. On blackness. All right. Teaching your kids on blackness. And I'm sharing some things that I've done with my children, some things that have come to me after the fact, and that if I were counseling, not counseling, that's pejorative. If I were in a position to offer perspective to particularly white mothers raising biracial kids, these are some of the things I might say. I would say musical exposure. Musical exposure. Expose your children to a range of music, to include your oldies but goodies, to include indie rock if that's your thing, right? But to introduce the long, fascinating, melodic inspiration that comes from black musicians, all the way from blues, bebop, jazz, R&B, hip hop, neo soul, whatever the case may be, right? Go back and get your Michael Jackson CDs or whatever it is, your Run DMC, right? Share that with your kids. You know, you guys will learn them together. You'll be driving home from school and y'all will be doing Rapper's Delight, right? Or singing New Edition songs, right? These are high family touch times, but you're doing it to a soundtrack, right? You're intentional about the music. You're introducing the voice of soul and music and resiliency and complexity, right? All music for the most part has a beauty to it, but this is a way of articulating through sound, through audio, black contribution to a vast diasporic platform and library of music. So I would be very intentional in your musical exposure. And I'd also recommend that you give your kids sort of cultural trinkets. I remember in high school, my dad gave me a bracelet that he had got in Vietnam, I think it was, when he was there. And it was a silver thing with these two like thick arrows, almost look like half pyramids on the end of it. And I wore that thing, man. I wore that thing all the time. But to me, it was a gift. So it was something my father gave me. It was something that connected to something outside of America. You know, while it was purchased in Vietnam, I don't know if it was a Vietnamese thing or if it was a mock off of something from Africa, but I felt like I was wearing culture, right? I wouldn't even take that thing off when I played basketball. Folks would get mad at me. I was cutting them all up with it. But symbol trinkets. I remember the pick. I had two picks, the one with the fist on the end of it and the one with the green and red that would fold up like almost like a switchblade, whatever the case may be. And I remember those things, right? So I had these little trinkets, these little cultural trinkets that let me know, okay, at least in terms of my hair, I was using sort of black or African or cultural kind of things, right? And so little kids remember these little things. I remember my first tape was the Gap Band, Burn Rubber on Me, right? And so my dad had got me a boom box, and that seemed to be into what the kids were doing at the time. And I went to the swap meet and got my Gap Band tape. It was obviously bootleg, and because the writing was all off and whatnot. But I jammed to my bootleg, and I stayed up, listened to the radio, and I would record Scorpio and Planet Rock. Right, I was just kind of getting into the music, and eventually I would learn how to dance. That's another thing. It's not on my list, but teach your children how to dance. Oh my God. Teach your beautiful sons and daughters how to dance. Man, I would take my little one, two, one, two. I would hold that down to the disco, right? And then I could get more complex with it. I could move my hips a little bit with it, right? But man, you talk about cultural cachet, biracial kids in the I'll Be Sure era at the youth party. Oh boy, and then I was pop locking and freakazoids, and we did dance routines, right? It was just immersing myself, into the culture in ways that weren't like a visitor or outsider. I was comfortable. I was in my age set, doing my age set things. All right. Yes, music is important. You are inspiring me as a parent. Thank you. Beautiful dance party, right? Mama and daddy dance with your babies. And if you can't dance, I don't give a damn. Turn that music on and just be all awkward with it. Just offbeat, whatever the case may be. Dance with your babies, man. Let them get comfortable with their bodies. The music will teach them rhythm. The music will teach them complexity and sound. It'll teach them vocabulary. It'll teach them phraseology, right? But then that dance, man, once you understand them words and you can convey them words with your body, oh my goodness. Man, ain't nothing like being at a party holding your own on the dance floor. All right, where am I at? I'm getting thrown off here, Magic. Beautiful family, thank you guys for being here with me. I appreciate you. I'm musing. All right, where am I at here? Okay, attendance of cultural events in the arts, right? As Mulatto talked about, Black History Month is coming up. It ain't hard to Google something, find out what's going on locally in the community, find out something that, is of appeal or interest to you or you think would benefit your seeds, and take them. Take them. If you're a white mother, you're going to be welcomed. Take them. It's just like when you got to take your biracial baby to the barbershop. There's not a more male-dominated, black-dominated space than the barbershop. Take them. Take them to Black History Month. Take them to a Juneteenth, whatever the case may be. I remember when I was probably 8, my dad took me to an Art Blakey concert. It was at the community college. I don't know where we were going, but he just said, let's go. And so I sat there, and Art Blakey was a percussionist in the jazz whatever four is. And so I just sat there. I had no context for it, but I was there. The audience was diverse. The band was black, and the music was bumping. And so, be intentional. I'd make a commitment that 2 or 3 times a year, if it's not normalized to you. Now, my children, they probably went to 10 culturally related events a year by nature of my work. A lot of times I was organizing the event, so I would bring them, or if I thought it had some value and I was going, I'd have them roll with me. But be intentional. Black History Month is an obvious place guard where you can put them in, but also think outside the month of February if there's another opportunity. Plug into social media that's talking about black events coming up, or even, ancestral other events that reflect the other community as well, right? If they're from, France, to use my example, tap into a French community, see what events they're having, get a chance to experience the way they celebrate, dance, party, honor history, celebrate, whatever the case may be. But it's got to be intentional, families. You have to be intentional. And if you are a monoracial parent raising a biracial kid and the other parent's not there, you have to become uncomfortable. You have to become uncomfortable. And that means take your monoracial self and go into another community of monoracial people that represent the other half of your beautiful child. You will be embraced, and they'll appreciate it. Okay, I see you, white mama, bringing that baby over here to get some of that black side. Music and dance is a very unifying force for all cultures. You're absolutely right. Future's golden. And Mulatto saves the day. Quartet. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. All right. If you all have strategies, feel free to drop them in as well. So where are we at? We talked about musical exposure, symbols of culture as gifts, attendance at cultural events, and then also leveraging the classroom of the home. Okay. This gets to your point a little bit, Magic. Leveraging the classroom of the home. Now, y'all may say, AJ, what the hell is the classroom of the home? Well, it's the dinner table. The dinner table is the classroom of the home. All right. My son won an award for being the most respectful student, so that's a thing they do nowadays. Love, right? They're trying to underscore the value of respect and sort of collaboratively working in space. But your son also is perhaps learning respect in an accelerated way because he's managing a duality at home. He has to navigate a duality to where monoracial kids just have a homogeneity to it, and so the lessons and over the interpretations and what they have to navigate with as biracial kids, they learn those lessons quicker than a young person that's raised in a homogenous kind of home, and that conveys itself on how they hold their own, how they interact with people in the classroom, which I imagine is of a different setting, different cultural community groups there. They've managed that, navigated that within their home setting. So when it comes to navigating diversity in the school environment, it's second nature to them, right? All right. Okay. Where are we? Okay, leverage the classroom of the home, which is the dinner table. Okay. If you're like most families, they begrudgingly make the dinner. Maybe the kids come in at different times, or if you're an organized, ritualized family, you say, "Okay, I'm cooking this dang dinner. Dinner's at 6. I want y'all butts in the chairs at 5:58, ready to go. You do you do the napkins, you do the knives and forks, you do the plates, right? You get the A1, you get the ketchup, right? You give them little chores and tasks, right? When I was managing my 5 at the house, man, we had ritual, boy. But then you get there, and then you got to have conversation. You got to talk, right? That's one thing I picked up from French culture, is that to eat within a 5-minute, 10-minute thing was to insult the family. No, you had to sit there, at least get ready for a half hour or an hour, and don't let it be a holiday. That's a full day deal. 2-hour dinner, family after the conversation, bring out a little wine and cheese, little fruit. You eat that salad last, and then you bring out the games, and that vino starts to kick in, and folks laughing, and that music gets turned up, and all of a sudden you got a party. No, you got to respect the classroom of the house. That's the dinner table. That is the dinner table. And so you got to think strategically about, well, what do you want to talk about? Because you can only say, how was the day so much, and hear about is good. Okay, well, what'd you do? Well, took a test. You got to make it fun. So we used to do riddles. We would, I'd always would play jazz music, so they had something acoustically in the background. We would do, math riddles, magic tricks, whatever the case may be. But also it was a chance to talk about biographies, right? And to your point, Mulatto, biographies of, in this instance, for me, it was Black folks, because I had, one of my leisures prior to perhaps the last 10 years was this would consume books, right? And I would always read nonfiction because I wanted to be able to use it in speeches. So I didn't want to read anything that didn't have any empirical factual data to it, because it wouldn't make sense for me to invest that mental time if I couldn't use it at another time in a speech. So, but that was my choice. I missed out on the wonders of sci-fi and those kind of things, but I would be able to speak to them, at sort of rudimentary levels about biographies, to include Black biographies, and to your point, Mulatto, to include biracial or multi-generationally mixed stories, right? To tell a Malcolm story is to acknowledge, what is it when you have whiteness in you? Added, what's the terminology, right? To talk about King is to talk about a sort of coming of age for America in terms of Black, white. To talk about Fannie Lou Hamer, right? To talk about Ida B. Wells. To talk about Nat Turner, right? To talk about Kool Herc, right? Just different biography figures, just to fill the time of family, to put them in a posture of inquiry and asking questions, right? But then also to, invite them to tell something they've learned, some current event, whatever the case may be, right? But to be very intentional at the classroom of the table, to take time and to use that for fun family connection, with fun, frivolous, trivial sharing of things that you want them to be priorities for them. All right. So let's get to the box here and we'll keep rolling with it. Thank you. Good parenting. Magic Mulatto. He's 7. It's been a lot of hard work, but it's so important. He's 7. That's critical age. That's second grade right there. He's starting to develop an association with education, whether he likes it or not, right? He's starting to probably have a little bit of sense of autonomy, but he's going to want to get away from mom and dad periodically. So strategically use that classroom of the family, that dinner table, right? And then don't make it too instructive or too cumbersome. Just make it, think laughter first, right? Think laughter first, and the way that would really work for me was telling jokes, riddles. Man, riddles. They love to figure it out, right? In fact, I discovered my second oldest son, who's now a robotics engineer, I discovered his love for algebra through riddles. And so he and I would do algebra, low-level algebra, right? X plus 3 equals 4. What does X mean? And he'd sit there, right? He'd work it out. Boom. Oh, X is 1. I said, okay. So X plus B equals 7. All right. Now figure it out. What does B represent? And he'd work it out. 6. Right. And so you can figure out where their talents are. So the classroom of the table. And then related to that is I'm going to recommend a family mantra. I've talked about this on other shows, but a family mantra, you might call it a prayer, whatever, is something that can complement what you already doing. From your religious worldview, you probably have something you do at the dinner table, but from a family worldview, how do you assert values, something that you repeat daily at the classroom of the family at dinner? You repeat it daily, they remember it, they recite it, and it becomes a part of their psyche, right? So I'm recommending that you make up a family mantra, something that you repeatedly say, and then you distribute around the table. Give them tasks. Okay, it's your turn to say the mantra, right? In the name of the Creator, in the name of the Creator, and all of his masculine and feminine representations, in all of his masculine and feminine representations. We ask that you look favorably. We ask that you look favorably over this family and the larger community called humanity, for we realize that we are all interconnected. My children have said that since they could talk. And so I put certain values into their brain, right? That's intentionality. It lifts up humanity. We are all interconnected. It gives deity status to men and women, right? Just planting seeds. All right. What do we have here? Going to be doing more riddles. That sounds fun. Perfect. Okay. So let me wind down here. And then finally, intentional friend engagement. You got to put your biracial babies in front of people of color. Maybe the family's grown, you move into the suburbs, and the suburbs don't look too diverse. Well, where is there a suburb that is diverse? My children grew up in a pretty mixed environment. I chose to live there. For one, I like being around flavor. You can read into that. I like being around a community, right? I like going to the grocery store and seeing folks of all different kind of backgrounds, right? I chose schools that were high in academics, but also had elements of diversity in it, right? And then my wife, when she wasn't working, she was home raising them babies, she would create groups. She'd find groups, Mocha Mom, Girl Scout, Black Girl Scout troops, right? Put them babies in those environments so that they could be and normalize being around beautiful, young Black folk, young Black girls and boys, right? And so this was a way of complementing what they're learning in the classroom. Where I live, the state I live is predominantly white, but we are intentional about creating pockets for cultural connect and community. And they developed a certain kind of cachet from that, a certain kind of association, right? And then obviously the last two, before I see if there's some questions that are out there, is sports. Get your babies in sports. Get your babies in sports. Get your babies in dance. Get your babies in violin, whatever the case may be. A part of parenting is exposure, exposing your babies. That's my mantra. That's what my dad told me. Exposure, exposure, exposure. The more your child is exposed to, it allows them to narrowly lock in as to what they want to do. And it forces them to do something common, sport, violin, dance, while at the same time navigating and develop friendships and social circles and all the nuance of creating group synergy depending on the age set. These are important skills within Maslow's hierarchy of belonging, which is connected to esteem. All right. Youth sports. Youth sports are going to be diverse. And then finally, my last piece. If y'all have some questions, time to throw them in the box. My last piece. If y'all are riding with me and if you're enjoying this, beautiful. I see we got some numbers in here. Welcome, you guys. Truly appreciate you coming in. If you haven't liked the YouTube button there, please do. And if you find value, give us a subscribe. Tell some folks about it. The last thing, hold on, let me get here. Yep, I wouldn't want to be with a woman who didn't want to have a family. That's where my heart is and will always be. Your critiques and advice is well sound. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Sport teaches them teamwork and fitness. Yep. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had my sons reading at 2. Let me flex as a parent real quick. Look, go ahead now. Go ahead and flex. You ought to flex. It's the biggest, most important assignment a human being can have, to be a parent. Correlated to that, the biggest decision we can make is who we choose to lay down with as a partner, right? We got too many single-parent homes, too many kids raised in single-parent families. The biggest responsibility of a woman and a man is to court publicly, to court with intentionality, and to produce a child out of planning and not passion. To produce a child out of planning and not passion. There's certain orders and steps that things ought to go through. And a child ought not be in a single-parent family because you forgot to put on a condom one day. All right? This parenting thing is real. It's the most important job. The most important thing for a human being to do is to produce another human being, because that is a relationship that will last 57 years. I'm using arbitrary numbers here. The average age of a human being's death is 78 years old. You subtract 57, it ties into roughly a birth age in the 20s. You're connected to your child for 60 years, and you will always play some parental role. First, you'll play a very dependent. You're raising them. They're highly dependent upon you. And then you have to step back a little bit and let them discover the world. And you're then a watching, observing, cajoling parent, right? And then you're a reminding parent. But you basically have established the character of this human being by the time they're 15 years old. And then you have to kind of step back and let them test the world out. And then you progressively become father mentor, mother mentor, meaning you're not imposing your life will upon them. You're not living vicariously through your child. You're working with them. You're helping them. You're filling in gaps. You're gently reminding. You're push-pulling. You're praising twice and redirecting once. You play a mentoring role. And then eventually you play a confidant role, where your child is now an adult with another adult that's produced a child, and they have questions, they have insecurities, they have uncertainties, they need help. And you become a confidant, right? You don't tell them what to do, because if it goes wrong, they'll hold you accountable for it. They'll blame you. You just share all the options, lay it all out on the table. And I'll say, beautiful son, beautiful daughter, you pick, and you own what you chose. The most viable responsibility a parent has, I'm on the soapbox, I don't know why I am. The most viable responsibility a parent has is to know when to be present, when to get the hell out of the way, and to not create a dependent adult. You cannot create a dependent adult that relies on you for adulthood things when they're grown. All right. Yeah, I am cooking. This is my lane, goddamn. All right. I had a son with the wrong woman, and we both would have been single parents. He didn't make it. Damn. Sorry about that, brother. But I hope we can have parents with the right partner, mental, spiritual stability. Yeah. I had a son with the wrong woman, and we both could have been single parents. Yep. It's very interesting, the cosmic creator and how he created our biology. Since we were 15 for boys, we've been obsessed with our penis. Women come out of puberty around 12, and the end of puberty is the seminal act of being able to produce a child. And then he collapses all these testosterone and hormones, the intensity of it, the high curiosity, the infatuation of it. It puts it in the age of 15 to 23 years old. But you're so young, developmentally, you're hyper in your physical stage. Sex is on your mind. You want it, and you're having it, right? And then you have this youthful dynamic of you think you're going to live forever, you feel immortal, and so you make immortal decisions. But then you get older and you become more psychologically grounded, more emotionally grounded. Then you go into intellectual phase. Then you enter into spirituality, and you realize by the time you're 40 years old, what the hell was I doing at 20? Man, I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your son, brother. All right. The future, yes, I give them the tools to make the right decisions, right, and then get out of the way. So the last strategy I'm recommending, and let me know if you have any questions or anything you thought that should be on this list or would recommend. The last strategy is books upon books upon books. Books upon books upon books. And if your child's not into hard textured old school books, these kind of books, The Warrior Method, The Parent's Guide to Rearing Healthy Black Boys, if that's not your book, this is a book I wrote, The Warrior Class. Talks about that age set of 15 to 26 in boys, right? Books upon books upon books upon books. Oh, chat's about to go left. Chat's about to go left. I hope it doesn't. I really do. I really do. But books upon books upon books. And if they're not into tangible books, then links upon links upon links. Flood your beautiful seeds with literary information. Understand what they like. If it's science fiction, flood them with science fiction. If it's galactic battle, flood them with that. If it's and pepper into their different kind of cultural books. Books improve vocabulary. There's a correlation between vocabulary and educational attainment and life lived, quality of life lived. The more expansive the vocabulary is, the more expansive life opportunities are. You can determine reading levels by grade at a very young age, as Mulatto talked about. Her child was 2. Books upon books upon books. Links upon links upon links. And don't do it as punishment. Don't assign them the chapter when they're messed up. Just normalize it within the routine. Be combative and counteractive to what they'll be exposed on social media, which is often mind-numbing, mundane type things. But expose them to books upon books upon books. And a part of that is because once you give your kids a library, there was a time in my house I probably had 500 books that they would pass on a regular basis. It normalizes learning. It normalizes literacy. And the most important lesson is that they will be impressed to the point they become indifferent to how great their community is. I'm going to say that again. They'll become so impressed by the vast array of contribution to uplift by Black folk and whoever else, biracial folk and whoever else. They'll be so impressed. It'll be so overwhelmed that they will then normalize it and take for granted, and it'll become indifferent. And at that point, they will have reached the true depth of humanity when greatness is associated with humanness. Achievement is associated with Blackness, whiteness, Chicano is native, is achievement is success aligned with humanness. And then they'll learn the not the vile, but the very important following lesson that even greatness has the opposite, which is bullshit. When you can realize a people's collective narrative is wondrous and ridiculous. A people's collective narrative is wonderful while simultaneously ridiculous. And if you can realize that truth, you'll stop generalizing your conversation towards any one of them in particular. You'll be so damn impressed with life lived by people under completely different circumstances. Not only will you want to associate yourself with it, but when you critique it, you do it from a complex understanding and you don't make blanket indictments against collective groups. It's easy to talk crazy to someone you know nothing about. But once you learn the lesson that people come together in a certain kind of way, and a child comes from a womb and a child cries and is dependent upon the life, their very life, upon other people who are struggling in different kind of forms, yet they show day and day again a compassion for a life, and that they're born into a world that's complex and varies based upon people's circumstances, which is the correlation and the outcome of a history. Once you realize that they laugh, they cry, they eat, they have joy, they have insecurity, they have self-doubt, they have moments of arrogance. Once we realize about that about a people, well, then you're reaching something of understanding of humanness. And once you get into that agape human level, it's hard to pull out one group of people and talk crazy to them. Man, I'm tripping today. I'm tripping. Y'all tell me I'm tripping. Where the hell is it? I'm tripping. Trying to make sure y'all don't trip up in the chat. I'm tripping. I'm tripping. Don't start tripping up in the chat. We got folks trying to work out identity. Trying to get away from one space of angst and disassociative inability to find a home. And you come into another home and y'all just at each other, man. That's unnecessary. It's nonsense. And no matter what truth you tell about them, there's 10 other truths that completely contradict that. We're all a complex being with moments of great shine and bullshit. All of us. I just want to make it clear the future goal is not part of our movement that's regarding me, Vanguard, and is in fact anti-us. Man, why can't y'all do that somewhere else, man? I look forward to learning and talking and have a conversation with beautiful sister. If out of that conversation something doesn't quite go right both ways, me towards her or her towards me, then we both have decisions to make. Love it. Yes, having a sense of greatness and achievement. Y'all, we are bigger than this. It ought to be very, very rare to denounce the humanness of another person, to critique it at an incidental level. That ought to be a rare thing. That ought to be a rare, rare thing, y'all. All right, I'm going in a different direction. So let me rewind and get back. The goal of all of this is to create a love and the capacity to self-examine Black achievement, white achievement, and Black bullshit and white bullshit. To develop a love capacity in your babies and the capacity when they get over to critically think and analyze and to praise Black achievement from a space of love, because that reflects your daddy. To critique and praise a love source that reflects your mama. To acknowledge that your mama's people and your daddy's people come from a great, beautiful line of wonderfulness and complexity and contradiction. And to realize in both there are bullshit. Okay, I don't know how to end it. Oh my goodness. Hey y'all, where are we at here? All right. So I need y'all to identify some white mothers to come on over here. And I say white mothers because most of the birth configurations of recent, of young, is going to be a Black father and a white mother. And hopefully they're married. And hopefully they're raising children, because we know in two function homes is the best situation, assuming there's health and stability in both parts. But then in many instances, you got mamas raising these biracial beautiful babies. And I want to be a resource and an outlet and a sounding board and a source for disagreement, whatever the case may be. But the most important thing is you made that baby, now you got to raise them into an adult. That takes time, intentionality. And you can't get caught up in your doubt, self-doubt. raised in a monoracial world, never had to deal with the duality on a wake up, go to sleep basis every day. You're nervous. You don't know what you're dealing with. You know how to raise a child because you were a child once and you could look to how your parents did it, but your biracial kid is coming to you with different kinds of questions. Your child shifts posture in silent ways in public settings and you're trying to read it. Your child looks at you in a certain kind of way and you're trying to read the unsaid, the unspoken, right? Monoracial children to monoracial families don't have that dynamic. You do. You do. You got to raise them babies. Outro music. That's what Mulatto said. He said, Kevin, we're ending this damn thing. All right, let's get a couple questions. We're going to get it. You're a great researcher, parents, biracial kids, and for us with biracial, the next generation, right? You know, I'm looking for a lane. I'm looking for a lane in this space. I'm enjoying it. I'd like to be among others, you know, kind of an older voice, an older generational voice to be, you know, a sounding board and to offer a few exaggerations and lies, but also more importantly, to be a sounding board for parents. Again, I don't profess to be a parent expert, but I do have life lived, and I've raised 6 of them babies in compliment with my wife, and them babies are doing decently. That's parents exaggerating as we do. So I'm seeing some more folks come in. Welcome, welcome. We're at the tail end of this thing. I kind of got a little, I think I was a little more entertaining today, a little more fire. Books upon books upon books, right? So go back and check the show out. What do we got here? Thomas Beck, how are you? I don't know if you've been on before, but appreciate you making a comment. Millennials are last generation of black people to marry black people. Millennials are the last generation of black people to marry black people. Well, as of today, 86% of black folks still marrying black folks, but they are the largest marrying out group. I hope that's not the case. I hope that's not the case. I'm an advocate for black love, but I understand people make their choices, and increasingly so, more and more folks are going to get interracially married, and wonderful, happy for them, but it's going to be new. It's going to be something, and there needs to be study, data, research of what it means to be biracial across various indicators so you can know something about the people, about your seeds, about the children, because what you know about them by way of data shapes how you parent, the kind of institutions you create, because every culture ought to be about the action of ensuring that its culture continues to progress towards its most equal, positive, healthy self, and equal, I mean, compared to other cultural configurations. Both me and my husband are mulatto, and our kids come out all different colors, right? My kids are this high yellow, and they all losing their hair. Oh, they mad at me about that, boy. They mad at me about that. One of them has, you know, sort of tight textured hair, so he's still rolling. That's their they tease each other around hair loss and height. None of them are taller than me, but that's their banter. So there's some good seeds. We need flowers over here. She has kids also, has a lot of great stories. Beautiful. All right. Beautiful family. I'm going to wrap it there. Y'all been rolling with me. I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all sort of checking the chat when I raised it. I saw a few more jabs in there, but hey man, it just doesn't bring any value. It don't bring any value. Hold you know your opinions and your impressions, and if you felt a certain way, that's your feeling. I understand and respect it. But hey, I don't want to see it over here, y'all. I don't want to see it over here. I want you to disagree with my content. I want you to add to the content. I want you to teach me from your life led where I'm right, where I'm wrong on the content. So direct your challenge or your check me. Okay, check me. All right. Mulatto's inviting you all to his channel after party. Have a wonderful night. I'm gonna go back with Thomas Beck. Y'all can bounce if y'all want to bounce. Appreciate it. Again, please like, please subscribe. I definitely have some growth goals. If you know some biracial parents, have them take a look, see if it's valuable or worth their time, and then hit me on my email should you want to chop offline, or maybe you got some ideas of a show you want to maybe explore. I'm open to collaborations and just kind of growing and trying to be relevant to the beautiful people. After party at Mulatto Vanguard's channel. Viruses are increasing the highest percent of all groups in America today. We have to be ready for this reality. No doubt, Thomas. Check out some of the other shows where we're speaking about what I believe would need to be in place for It's called The Nine Criteria. Mulatto's doing some further emphasis on that. I also got a piece called The Biracial Revolution Will Not Be Televised. It's on YouTube, playing off Gil Scott Heron's The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. So we're exploring some of that. But yeah, you're right. It's inevitable. And the fact that, to me, at its core, at its foundational core, I see it as a biracial kid saying they have to live in a world that they can equally acknowledge, embrace, and outwardly profess love for both love sources, whether that's their white parent, their white parent and their black parent. That was something my generation did not do. This generation is saying, I have to exist, acknowledging that I am one that reflects both black and white. That is a gesture of love, a love for themselves, to themselves, but also a love to both parents in ways that previous generation of biracial kids did not have. That alone ought to be the motivating catalyst, not necessarily any resentful experience or interactions you've had with other cultural groups. Maybe that's a catalyst to self-examine, but the ultimate purpose, the glue of this thing, of whatever it becomes, it has to be rooted in a love. And to love both parents 100% holistically, despite, I understand, functionality and broken relationships, but to have the capacity to openly, outwardly, and inwardly love both mama and daddy is something that my generation did not have. We had to force ourselves into sort of different kind of cultural circumstances, and we did not have the courage at the time to declare loudly as children trying to figure out the world that I have a white mama. People knew we did, but we were navigating cultural space and it became political, and so we tend to silence white mother to the uplift of black father or black aesthetic. This generation saying, no, ain't doing that. I'm not having that. I'm not going to be anything that forces me to sort of silence my white mother or renegotiate my black daddy. And in my learning process, I'm not going to speak ill or stereotypically of the community from which my father comes. I'm going to critique it analytically. I'm not going to indict all whiteness under a banner of white supremacy. I'm going to critique it analytically. I'm going to end on that. Beautiful family, thank you guys so much. Appreciate you. Subscribe, like, share. We'll catch you all on the next one. I'm out of town in the next couple of days. I'm speaking at Washington State University, I think it is. But when I get back, I'll chop with y'all. Hit me on that email should you have any questions or just want to build. Appreciate y'all. Love, love, love. J4 Conversations. Peace, peace.